Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you very much. You offer both a great example of an industry and an institution of higher learning coming together, and the synergies that can be created, not only for one or the other, but for both in developing that relationship. So there is a conduit for the hospitality industry that is developed, not only working with St. Joseph's, but obviously other institutions as well. That's important. The number of jobs that are impacted, certainly, Mr. Johnson, you detailed those here on Long Island, the number of people who are employed, the number of people who come in and seek lodging in our hotels here as a region. It's important, and the ability to develop those skills is equally as important. I think a lot of what happens, though, and I do appreciate your point, Doctor, about how a liberal arts education serves as a baseline for whatever a person wishes to pursue. But there comes a point where we have to begin to fundamentally address the question, Mr. Johnson, that you posed earlier, or the issue you posed earlier, that we are importing hundreds of young adults every summer to meet the needs of the region, and we do have the bodies here to do that.
Absolutely.
We have the bodies, we have the skills, we certainly have the institutions capable of training, and we have the wherewithal. But there's a need, I think, societally to destigmatize certain type of work, and perhaps that's going to be the tougher challenge as we move forward, because we can set policies in place, and we can certainly advocate for changes in policies, but these are good-paying careers, not just jobs, that offer great opportunities, but not everyone's going to be the starting quarterback. Not everyone's going to be the star running back. We need people who are on the line, who are blocking, so that they can excel as well. And so I think that's part of this discussion as well. So I want to thank you both.
I'm sorry. What you said, though, as far as, you're right. You need generals, you need lieutenants, you need foot soldiers. However, the one thing in the hospitality industry, probably the average managerial job is probably $75,000 to $80,000.
Right.
So there's that career path that really can move. And United States, now not just Long Island, but United States, about 35% of the workforce is in hospitality. A third of the workforce is in hospitality. So it's a huge industry, and on Long Island, almost 10% of the workforce. Pretty big voting group. When you think about it, 10% of the workforce is in hospitality.
I just want to make one more point to what you had just said, and I agree with you. Part of the issue which we're trying to address right now is drilling down to the high schools and, in fact, even middle schools.
Right. Okay,
and getting the word out, giving kids the idea of what is out there. And we're working more with and I know Rosalie mentioned East Islip High School on their CTE programs, and we're working with some of the high schools to help them to develop some of those programs and partner with them, whether it's in our business administration department or hospitality or nursing or what have you. And that's really important. We've developed the bridge programs for those who want it. It's optional. It's held on their own high school. If they choose, they can take it as a 3-credit course. It's taught there by their own instructors. We have to make the approval process. So we have those things in place. But I think we need to begin to educate the kids, because there is a disconnect between some of the guidance counselors as well as some of our institutions. We do a pretty good job, I believe, in hosting a lot of counselor events where we highlight some of these programs, so they're aware of it, because some of them are new, and there may not be that much of an understanding, or it's perceived, as you said, as a low-paying, just a job and not a career. So we're trying to educate educators at this point, and I think that's critical as well.
We're actually offering scholarships. In the past few years, we've probably have accumulated approximately $200,000 of scholarship money, and we disperse it amongst the 4 colleges. And we think that's helped, and obviously allays a lot of fears of college tuition. And as long as we It has to be in the hospitality industry, but and actually we have another scholarship coming in, and we work alongside of the colleges. And all that, 100% of the funds go to the students in colleges on Long Island in the hospitality industry. So.
That's wonderful. Senator Croce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one comment to your point, Doctor. I have seen in practice what St. Joseph's is doing, both in East Islip and other school districts, in really shepherding some of those CTE programs. I think the collateral benefit of it is that the parents are now being educated about what is going on and how there are different training programs for their children, and they themselves are looking at some of those professions as their children are going through it, as in the case of some of our school districts on the island where they have actual full-service spas set up in their schools now, and the kids are actually running these as a business. So it's something that is new, certainly to those of us who grew up in the Grumman Aerospace days on Long Island. That was the industry and the collateral industries that spun off of it. But I want to compliment St. Joseph's for the work they're doing, and I know the communities are very appreciative for the skill sets that their children are getting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Jamie Moore, who's the chairman and president of ADAPT. Welcome.
Thank
Good
you very
afternoon.
much. Thanks for having me here today and giving me the opportunity to testify on workforce development. I represent manufacturers across Long Island in two different roles. One is as the president of ADAPT, which is the Aerospace and Defense Trade Organization on Long Island, and two, through the newly formalized Manufacturing Consortium of Long Island. So the narrative on manufacturing has been dominated by perception, the perception that manufacturing is dead on the island. The reality is in stark contrast to that. We have 3,110 manufacturers on Long Island. It is the largest concentration in New York State, one of the largest in the nation and across the world. The breadth and depth that we have is amazing. We make anything from baby wipes up to MRI machines up to the wings for the space shuttle. So the interesting part there is that if we aren't going to focus I guess our efforts to support what is the strongest foundational economic support for our state, then I think we're heading in the wrong direction. So with ADAPT and with the Manufacturing Consortium, we've made a strong push to get information from industry on what they need, especially with workforce. We've gone out to the 3,000 manufacturers. Actually, as a whole, they represent 75,000 employees in Long Island, and we've talked to them about what do they need. The main thing that comes up is that they're afraid of the new global competition for talent. There's a predicted shortage. There is a shortage in skilled workers currently, and how are they going to fill that? Historically, we've had the large companies who have been here, the large OEMs or prime contractors who have served as incubators for those companies. If I need a machinist, I go to Northrop Grumman, I'm good to go. Now that those companies have moved on, we need new support systems, or we need to rely on previous support systems that were underutilized, such as the Suffolk County Community College and the other universities and organizations like BOCES on the island that can fill those gaps. Some of the key skills that we're looking for, that we're going to be looking for, are in cybersecurity and IT with programming, data entry, monitoring of systems. In metals and composites, we're looking for machinists, processing, assembly folks, as well as sourcing and other back office operations. We're looking for research, batching, mixing, packaging, and inspection in the chemical and pharma areas. And then, importantly, we also, across industries need to find folks who are in quality, sales, marketing, procurement, administration, human resources, and in management and leadership roles. A lot of the discussion on workforce development is focused on the skilled workers that come in and work on the floor or who work in the laboratories, et cetera. But there needs to be a focus also on the New York State business owner. That individual or those individuals are the ones creating these roles, creating more jobs for us to fill, more positions for us to put our workers into. And they're also the ones who are going to come out and engage with our workforce development resources to tell us not only what do they need now, but what do they need in the future so we can have proactive systems. So basically, I think from a Long Island and a New York State perspective, in order to remain competitive, we need to offer best-in-class workforce development practices along with support systems and programs that will allow us in this global competition for talent to have a competitive advantage in both sourcing that talent and helping companies win contracts that allow them to keep those folks employed as well as create new jobs. So my recommendations today are focused on the New York State Department of Labor programs as well as the SUNY Community College Network. So first I'd like to focus on the New York State Department of Labor programs with regard to workforce development. There are funds that are available that you can apply once a year through the consolidated funding application for unemployed, special populations, new hire, and existing worker training. By and large, companies are generally unaware that these funds are available. I've walked about 250 manufacturing shop floors over the last 2 or 3 years with 3,000 companies. I have a lot more to go. I would say a good 80% of those have never heard of the state support systems, the grants that are available, et cetera. So first off, in order to match their needs, I would suggest we move off of a one-time-a-year application. We need a just-in-time training application very similar to what we see with what Rosalie is doing with WDI, being able to go out and talk to a small or mid-sized business, find out what their immediate training needs are and get them into that, get their workers trained. What you see a lot in the small to mid-sized businesses are they're not going to be able to look at their next 12 to 18 months and what training they need. They don't have an organization development department. In a lot of cases, they don't have a human resources professional. So they're very reactive in what they need. They get a big contract in. That contract requires them to go from machining on a 4-axis to purchasing a 5-axis CNC machine and training somebody on that. They didn't know that was coming 12 months ago when the deadline for training happened. So I would suggest first off we need to move that approach. Additionally, going back to the fact that most of the companies don't know about it, we need some kind of a marketing approach, whether it is a state marketing campaign or whether it goes back to the early 2000s when there were marketing funds for nonprofits to go out and share the New York State programs. Something needs to be done there so that it can get out more broadly, as well as increase the amount of funding for these programs. Going on to some specific programs that the Department of Labor is offering, the Unemployed and Special Populations Program has been particularly successfully implemented by Suffolk County Community College. One of the most recent programs is the development of an entry-level workforce training in manufacturing, so shop floor math, understanding of quality, safety, et cetera. Those are the types of programs that we really need to continue funding and put more money into and expand not only on Long Island but across New York State. The thing we need to be careful of is that there have been awards in the past to organizations to deliver training that is in their core curriculum, that matches what they've been doing, that are higher level skills, but the populations that they put into those programs will not be able to, based on either their experience or their education level or any other number of factors, they do not have the ability to take that training and turn it into employment. So we need to have a review system that very carefully looks at, and it goes back to the question of competition for funds, that very carefully looks at, are we putting funding into programs that lead to results? So those performance metrics are critical and not wasting money. In addition to that, I think that we should look at industry review teams for the Regional Economic Development Councils, for the WIB funding. Anything that goes out to put funding into training our workforce should be reviewed by people who are actually hiring those workers. So putting job creators onto industry review teams across the 10 different business regions of New York State, I think, would make a lot of sense. And then having an overarching piece at the state level that either trains those industry review boards in what they're looking for or gathers information from them to share with the Department of Labor, WIBs, et cetera, on what they should be doing when they're actually doing the grading of the scores for this consolidated funding application. The new hire training program is another piece that they offer. Quite honestly, it sounds like a fantastic program. You can get up to $100,000 to help you train new hires. Once you get into the weeds, in fact, when we first introduced it to companies, we had 4 companies each get $100,000 each. This was 3 years ago. Not a single cent of it has been spent. There are federal requirements that tie the hands of the local Department of Labor in order to be able to hand it out. They have to serve, in essence, as the recruiting company. It has to be for dislocated workers who have been out of work for, I believe it's 26 weeks. And it's a cumbersome process to go through. The problem that companies find is they either have difficulty working through that process or there's a lack of qualified candidates for what they need. And so that money, in essence, goes right back into the pot. If there is a way to repurpose that and or reframe it and simplify the system that allows companies to take advantage of that, I think that's what we need to look at. The other option there may be to qualify, allow individuals and or outplacement firms or recruiting firms to qualify individuals who have that 26 weeks of unemployment, and use that in essence as an incentive to get employed. If you bring me on board, I have these skill sets. I also come with $20,000 worth of free training for you. So that's something that we should definitely look at. The other aspect of that may be, and this may help simplify the process, instead of requiring that your entry into the new hire and your ability to utilize the new hire funds prior to your hiring, it could be looked at as a post-hire application for training funds, which would allow the companies to find skilled applicants, qualify them, and then apply for the program. The existing worker program out there is probably the one with the highest potential return on investment, and it's the one that we've seen companies use the most. The majority of ADAPT's members are 20 to 100 employee companies. They're competing with companies across the world who, generally speaking, operate in lower cost areas, so their available funds are restricted in comparison to their competition. These funds through the Department of Labor for existing worker training are critical to their ability to maintain or create a competitive advantage in this environment. However, if you look at a review over the past 5 years of the application through the consolidated funding process, there is a preferential treatment to training programs that are put forward that have large numbers of employees impacted, 100, 200, 300 employees receiving overview training. The issue there is you're not building skills. You're not creating something that actually is allowing those individuals to move up in their position. And generally speaking, you're not creating the ability for that company to increase its profitability and therefore hire more people, buy more machinery, go out and get more contracts. So I would again suggest that we have that industry review team looking at these applications. I also would suggest that we change the metrics away from the number of employees that we're touching and look at the actual impact of that training and what it's going to do to that business and for those individual employees who are going through it. The other piece that I would recommend is looking beyond just training individuals and allowing the business owners to get certifications, either in the aerospace and defense industry, AS 9100 certification, or in the broad manufacturing industry, ISO 9001 or ISO, I think it's 1485 for FDA, allowing them to get certifications that open them up to getting more business opportunities on a national and international scale. That will, again, it's basically indirect impact on workforce development. But as you bring in more business, you're able to bring in more employees. You're able to afford training to bring your current employees up in skill. So I think we should look at operationalizing more than just individual skills development and basically doing company skills development. Moving to the New York State Community College Network, I view that as the most critical resource that this state has in developing a competitive advantage both nationally and globally. My experience has been primarily with Suffolk County Community College, with John Lombardo, the Board of Trustees, and President Sean McKay. They are far and above ahead of the pack nationally. I represented New York State as a featured panelist at the most recent National Aviation, Aerospace, and Defense Workforce Summit. Most of my conversation after I got past the telling everybody they should come to Long Island and try the wines was about what Suffolk County Community College was doing, what we were doing with the Advanced Manufacturing Center, what was being offered through the Training Center, the programs that were in place for HVAC. The feedback I got, and this was hundreds of people in the audience, and I believe there were 30 or 40 community colleges from across the nation in attendance. The feedback I got back was, oh my God, that's amazing. How are you guys so far ahead of the rest of us in what you're doing to support workforce? So from that standpoint, my recommendation would be let's look at, and I go back to what your questions were to John, let's look at how we can fund those shining jewels that we have based on their performance. Suffolk Community College can not only impact Long Island, but they can impact New York State as a whole. We're sending workers not just to Suffolk, not just to Nassau, but we're sending them out across the world. And we're sending them out more prepared than other areas are sending them out. So there needs to be an understanding of that, a support for that, and an expansion of their ability to not only handle more students, but handle more industries and more business needs. The other piece of this would be, I think that we need to look at, and I'm going to go back, Senator, to a conversation we had several months ago, and you've alluded to it here as well. I think we need to look at the ability to coordinate funds and to oversee funds for workforce development. The way I look at New York State in competition nationally and even globally is we're now dealing with a situation, especially Air Force and aerospace and defense, that global economic clusters are coming together and branding themselves. Long Island in particular is still branding themselves company by company. So if I show up at a table and I'm New York State and I've got my jigsaw puzzle and I'm sitting next to South Carolina and I'm sitting next to the south of France, they've got jigsaw puzzles that are put together and you can see the whole picture. Now, I know they don't have they don't have the best picture. I've got the best picture in front of me. I've got the best crafted jigsaw puzzle pieces, but mine's not put together. So we need to get the whole picture. We need to have somebody, an organization or an individual who in each business region and then also at the state level can put that picture together, can figure out what the efficiencies are, can figure out where the opportunities and gaps are and fill those. And so that would be my overall recommendation. So thank you.
No, thank you very much. Questions? I appreciate that. I think that is at the crux of our discussion today, and certainly over the last months that we've held these hearings is exactly that. How do we as a state coordinate? We're spending the money. We've made the investment, but akin to jogging in place, we're not going anywhere. And sometimes there's a tendency to confuse motion for progress. We actually have to coordinate those efforts and allow for them to work in tandem, so they're not necessarily working against each other. There shouldn't be competitions in regions amongst organizations doing the same thing. And yet, unfortunately, time and again, we see whether they are not-for-profit regional organizations or whether they're even governmental organizations, even within the state itself, there are siloed efforts that would be far better if we took the opportunity to actually get them break down the silos and get them to work together. And again, I agree with you that we need to take best practices. Suffolk County Community College is one of those best practices that we should be able to take and replicate given the right opportunities in different parts of the state. So I appreciated your testimony. I certainly appreciated the recommendations, and we will be following them and addressing them. So thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I am going to I'm going to take a 2-minute break. Next up is Gene Silverman, Executive Director of Nassau BOCES, in a minute.